Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll begin. 4.6 billion years, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine.
In the Hadean Eon, 200 MA after the birth, it would have been a difficult time to live on the Earth. Frequent collisions would have vaporized the oceans, covering the planets with clouds given a promotion. When the rain and the clouds began to descend, the oceans themselves began to set a new trend. Hydrothermal settings provided suitable sites. This is the beginning of the origins of life.
Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll continue. To 3.5 billion years, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine.
The oldest known fossilized prokaryotes were laid. They may have evolved out of protobionts, RNA maids. People argue that eukaryotes became. They are made up of prokaryote contains. The metabolism through photosynthesis or compounds brought about change to the evolutional bounds. But nuclei is what this organism lacked. To become more evolved, this cannot be the fact.
Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll continue. To 1.7 billion years, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine.
Eukaryotes were larger than organisms before. They were new breed of prokaryotes and much more. A variety of structures separated called organelles gave them the ability to make complex group of cells. These organisms had a nucleus to protect DNA and RNA so it wouldn't get wrecked. Animals and fungi are made up of these. New methods of life were able to be seized. Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll continue. 65 million years, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Dinosaurs ruled the world in ignorant bliss until an asteroid came crashing down and ruined all this. The sharp decrease of species, they coined a mass extinction, brought the world back to a time when there were no distinctions. We know there were many extinctions before, but this has left in our minds the most gore. New species gained dominance because of this event, left opportunities for human descents.
Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll continue. 250 years ago, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine.
Darwin's origin of species caused great questions. His theories did not match up with other scientists' suggestions. His voyage on the Beagle helped inform his plans, caused him to adore new animals as fans. It is said that the best adapted will win, while others will begin to lose their own kin. The struggle for life is the theory's plot. Natural selection is really what caught. Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so I'll continue. 217 years ago, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. The endosymbiotic theory concerns an organelle, mitochondria to be exact, and plastids as well. Many similarities between these and the old began to lay evidence for a new story to be told. Ribosomes were too small to fit there. Must have come from something else's fare. They had been engulfed by prokaryotes in the past. The benefits were enough to make it last. Before science, people thought life was complex, but then scientists began to bring up questions that vexed. They hadn't even begun to explain what happened, so continue. 2009, just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. Just imagine. A new theory of extraterrestrials seeding the Earth with the debris of a comet's girth. NASA sent up a probe to investigate and discover glycine and amino acid was uncovered. The essential blocks of life are prevalent in space. When the Earth was bombarded, it could have created a base. Rather than life being created on its own, it might have been created in some place unknown.